Uncle sent me video of my family calling me worthless burden, while I'd been paying their mortgage. When my uncle sent me that video, it felt like the foundation of my life had cracked beneath me. There they were, my parents and my brother Ryan, sitting comfortably at the same old kitchen table in Phoenix, speaking about me as if I were nothing more than an obligation. The warm Arizona sunlight poured through the windows, its golden glow feeling almost ironic against the cold, cutting words they spoke. I had always been close to my father. He was my hero, my biggest supporter, the one who held my hand when I was afraid, who stayed up late helping me with school projects, and who always told me I could achieve anything if I worked hard enough. I can still see the pride in his eyes when I won my first speech competition, the way he cheered louder than anyone else in the crowd. When I fell off my bike, he didn't scold me, he picked me up, wiped my tears, and told me falling was just part of learning. He made me feel like I mattered, like I was valued. But now, no. He just sat there nodding along as my mother and Ryan tore me down. Not a single word in my defense. No disappointment in them, just silent agreement, as if I truly was nothing more than a burden. The video was shaky, clearly recorded in secret, but their words rang out with brutal clarity. I watched it 3 times, each replay carving away another layer of disbelief, replacing it with something colder, sharper. For the past 4 years, I had been the silent force keeping them in that house, making significant contributions to their mortgage through my real estate firm, Evergreen Property Investments. They believed they were paying a bank, never once questioning the arrangement my financial advisor had carefully structured. Every month they sent in their small share while I covered the rest, more than $200,000 in total. And yet here they were, mocking the very support that had kept them afloat. A message from my Uncle Mark came through seconds later. "You needed to see this, Emily." I couldn't stay quiet any longer. "They've been saying things like this for months." I sat in my home office, staring at the spreadsheets detailing every payment I had made. The numbers didn't lie. My hands should have been shaking with anger, but they weren't. They were steady, calm in a way that almost felt dangerous. I pulled up the mortgage contract, my eyes settling on the clause my financial advisor had smartly insisted on including. A slow, knowing smile crossed my lips. The purchase option clause. A safety net. No. It was time to use it. I wondered if she had foreseen this unraveling, sensed the cracks forming beneath the surface long before they gave way. The next mortgage payment was due in 2 weeks, but for the first time, I wasn't blindly fulfilling an obligation. I knew exactly what needed to be done. I picked up my phone and typed a message to my uncle. "Thank you for showing me the truth. Don't worry, I won't let them know you sent this, but things are about to change." For as long as I could remember, I had been the invisible thread holding my family together, a silent guardian ensuring they never felt the full weight of their own failures. Yet they never acknowledged it, not once. 4 years ago, when the housing market in Phoenix crumbled and their home teetered on the brink of foreclosure, I stepped in. Not because they asked, but because I couldn't stand to see them fall. I was 27 then, already carving out my own success as a software development manager, a career they dismissed as insignificant. "Software isn't a real career for a woman," my mother would say, her voice dripping with disdain, as if my achievements were nothing more than a child's hobby. "Ryan is the one with real business instincts." And yet, with all his so-called expertise, Ryan had driven the family real estate firm into near collapse within 2 years of taking over. When they needed help with the mortgage, I didn't hesitate. But I was smarter than they gave me credit for. My financial advisor Kate had seen the writing on the wall before I did. "Protect yourself," she had warned. "Form an LLC, purchase the house through it, and let them believe they're still dealing with a bank. That way you keep them afloat while keeping yourself out of their mess." It had seemed like the perfect solution, a way to help without becoming their crutch. And so, Evergreen Property Investments LLC became their unseen benefactor. Every month they dutifully sent in their modest payments, never realizing I was the one absorbing the majority of the cost, over $200,000 to date. They believed they were standing on their own feet. I let them believe it. The only person who knew the truth was Uncle Mark. He had overheard Kate and me discussing it at a family gathering and pulled me aside afterward. "You're too good to them, Emily," he had said, shaking his head. "They don't deserve your generosity." I had brushed it off at the time. "They're my family. They might not agree with my choices, but they've always given me a home." Now, watching the video for the 4th time, I felt those words turn to dust in my mouth. Their voices echoed, each syllable sharpening into a blade. "She owes us." What a joke. The least she can do. Each phrase cut deeper, twisting into the very core of me. I had spent years as their foundation, their unseen support, holding them up while they mocked the very hands that had kept them from falling. But not anymore. I turned to my laptop, opening the mortgage agreement, my gaze locking onto the clause Kate had insisted I include. A slow, knowing smile curled at the corner of my lips. The purchase option clause. A quiet safeguard. Now, there's time to use it. I opened my laptop and logged into Evergreen Property Investments LLC's account. The next mortgage payment was due on the 15th, just 2 weeks away. They had never been late before, always transferring their portion on time like a ritual they barely thought about. But now, after seeing that video, after knowing exactly what they thought of me, I had no intention of covering the rest this time. Let them face the reality of their own ingratitude. Let them deal with the bank on their own. They had no idea that the daughter they saw as a burden was, in fact, their landlord. The thought curled at the edges of my lips, not quite a smile, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that for once, the scales were tipping in my favor. Sometimes karma just needs a little push. But the betrayal didn't stop there. The next day, Uncle Mark sent me more evidence. This time it wasn't just a video, it was screenshots. A family group chat I had been deliberately excluded from. They had created it 6 months ago. The name? Family Finances. Each message hit harder than the last, a slow-burning reminder of just how little they thought of me. Emily thinks she's so special with her tech job, Ryan had written. She barely helps with the mortgage while I'm here every day running Dad's business. And then my mother's response, the words that made my blood turn cold. We should ask her for more money. She's single with no kids. What else does she spend it on? After all we sacrificed to raise her, she can't even properly support her family. I pulled up my financial records, forcing my hands to stop trembling as I calculated the total. In the last 4 years, I had contributed $267,843 toward their mortgage through Evergreen Property Investments LLC, while they had only managed $52,500. Month after month they sent in their portion, completely unaware that I had been covering an additional $5,400 every month. They thought I wasn't helping. They thought I wasn't doing enough. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Sweetie, could you come to dinner this Sunday? We need to discuss something important. I already knew what that something important was. Another request for money. Another guilt trip served up with forced smiles and thinly veiled manipulation. The thought of sitting at that dinner table pretending I didn't know the truth made my stomach turn. I grabbed my phone and dialed Kate. I need to know my options with the purchase agreement. This time I wouldn't be their safety net. This time they were going to fall. I had a feeling you might, Kate said, her voice carrying no hint of surprise. It was as if she had been expecting this moment all along. Remember that clause we included? If they miss a payment, Evergreen Property Investments can exercise the purchase option immediately. The house would be yours outright and they'd become month-to-month tenants. A plan started taking shape in my mind, the pieces clicking into place like a puzzle I had unknowingly been assembling for years. And if they're late with rent? I asked, already knowing the answer but wanting to hear it out loud. Kate hesitated for just a second before confirming what I already suspected. Standard Arizona eviction laws would apply. You'd be within your rights to give them notice. Then she paused. Emily, are you sure you want to go this route? I thought about it, about the years of condescension, of being their walking ATM, of their hushed laughter at my expense. I thought about Ryan, their so-called golden child, running our father's business into the ground while they praised his business instincts. I thought about every snide remark about my career, my independence, my supposed obligations to them, and I made my decision. Yes, I replied, my voice unwavering. I'm sure. But I won't tell them anything yet. Let them think everything's normal for now. I typed out a response to my mother's invitation. Of course I'll come to dinner. Looking forward to it. The heart emoji felt ironic but necessary. After all, they had taught me well. Sometimes the best revenge is served with a perfect poker face. The next mortgage payment was due in 13 days, and for the first time since this arrangement began, I wouldn't be there to catch them when they fell. Dinner felt like an exercise in restraint, a test of my ability to sit across from them and pretend I didn't know the truth. I arrived at their Phoenix home exactly at 6 p.m., the setting sun casting streaks of orange and violet across the desert sky. The house, my house, technically stood just as it had for the past 20 years, its facade unchanged, its walls hiding secrets that had finally come to light. The familiar scent of my mother's lasagna filled the air, a carefully chosen weapon meant to disarm me, to pull me back into the warmth of nostalgia. Emily, sweetheart. My mother rushed to embrace me, her gold bracelet catching the light. New, shiny, expensive. I noted it immediately. Probably bought with money that should have gone toward their mortgage. That same mortgage payment was due in 9 days. And this time, I wouldn't be paying it. Ryan sat at the dining table, looking smugger than usual in his neatly pressed business casual attire, the uniform of a man who believed he had everything under control. He leaned back in his chair, flashing that self-assured smirk I had seen too many times before. Well, look who finally decided to join us. His voice carried that usual blend of arrogance and passive aggression, as if I had been neglecting some unspoken duty to them. I smiled, the memory of his words in the family group chat flashing through my mind, me barely helping while he was supposedly the one keeping everything afloat. If only he knew the truth. If only he realized that his entire lifestyle was propped up by my silent generosity, that without me, his illusion of success would shatter like glass. I always make time for family, I said smoothly, the irony thick on my tongue. My father emerged from his study, his reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, shuffling a stack of papers. Bank statements. The sight nearly made me laugh. So they had been preparing their approach, structuring their appeal like a carefully written sales pitch, making sure everything was in order before presenting their latest request. Before we eat, my mother began, setting the steaming tray of lasagna on the table, we wanted to talk about something important. She glanced at my father, who gave a slow, deliberate nod of approval. Of course, I replied casually, serving myself a generous portion, taking my time, letting them stew in the anticipation. What's on your mind? Ryan cleared his throat, straightening in his chair like he was about to deliver a well-rehearsed speech. Well, as you know, Dad's business has been facing some challenges. The real estate market isn't what it used to be. Slow, thoughtful bite of lasagna, chewing deliberately. The Phoenix market wasn't the problem, Ryan was. The market was thriving, real estate was booming, but somehow, under his watch, my father's once respectable business had started to crumble. We've been thinking, my mother continued, reaching across the table, her fingers wrapping gently around my hand, about how blessed we are to have such a successful daughter. Her words were coated in warm nostalgia, a delicate reminder of my duty. Your father and I sacrificed so much to give you a good education. I watched her performance with newfound clarity, the soft touch, the subtle invocation of past sacrifices, the gentle manipulation disguised as gratitude. It was all carefully choreographed, rehearsed just enough to sound sincere. The mortgage payment has become quite a burden, my father added, his voice carrying that particular weight of paternal authority, the same tone he once used to guide me as a child, except now it wasn't guidance, it was control. Ryan had always tried to make me feel small. And with you doing so well in your computer work, software development, I corrected automatically, though they had never bothered to understand the difference. Right, Ryan waved a dismissive hand. Anyway, we thought maybe you could help a little more with the monthly payments. After all, this is your family home too. If only they knew how much of it was already mine. We're only asking for an extra $2,000 a month, my mother added quickly. It's not much considering your salary. I took another bite of lasagna, using the moment to maintain my composure. They wanted $2,000 more when they had no idea I was already paying over $5,000 each month? The audacity was almost impressive. I'll think about it, I said finally, my voice neutral. Times are a bit uncertain right now. Uncertain? Ryan scoffed. Come on, we all know you're doing fine. Unlike some of us who are actually working hard to keep this family's legacy alive. I smiled, thinking about the notification their bank would send when they missed their payment next week. You're right, Ryan. Sometimes we all get exactly what we deserve. After dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom but took a deliberate detour past my father's study. The door was slightly ajar and I could hear my parents and Ryan speaking in hushed voices. Paused, my heart pounding as their words drifted out. She's not going to help, Ryan said, his voice bitter. Did you see how she just sat there, acting all superior with her tech money while our business is struggling? Patience, my father replied, his tone calm but calculating. We have another option. Remember those investment documents I found in her cloud storage when she used our Wi-Fi last month? A chill ran down my spine. They had snooped through my files during my last visit. I had carelessly used their Wi-Fi without a VPN, and my cloud storage had synced automatically. I looked it up, my father continued. It's a legitimate LLC and it's doing very well. She's been hoarding money there instead of helping her family. I raised a snake, my mother hissed, her voice thick with resentment. We'll give her one more chance to help voluntarily, she added. If not, I'll remind her. About that time in college when she took money from your business account for her tuition. He thought we never knew, but we have proof. She'll have to help us then. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. The money they were talking about. I had borrowed it with my father's permission when their check for my tuition bounced. I had even paid it back within a month, with interest. But did that matter to them? No. They didn't care about the truth. They only cared about squeezing more money out of me. And it didn't stop there. If she refuses to help, my mother continued, her voice lowering but still perfectly clear, we can apply some pressure. Isn't that house still under her company's name? If we create a little scandal, claim she tricked her own family to steal the house, what do you think will happen? The media would eat that story up, Ryan sneered. She wouldn't risk her career over this. I clenched my fists, my breathing slowing. This wasn't just about money. They were willing to ruin my reputation to get it. I had always thought their greed had limits. That no matter what, they were still my family. I was wrong. Ryan had always tried to make me feel small. And with you doing so well in your computer work, software development, I corrected automatically, though they had never bothered to understand the difference. Right, Ryan waved a dismissive hand. Anyway, we thought maybe you could help a little more with the monthly payments. After all, this is your family home too. If only they knew how much of it was already mine. We're only asking for an extra $2,000 a month, my mother added quickly. It's not much considering your salary. I took another bite of lasagna, using the moment to maintain my composure. They wanted $2,000 more when they had no idea I was already paying over $5,000 each month? The audacity was almost impressive. I'll think about it, I said finally, my voice neutral. Times are a bit uncertain right now. Uncertain? Ryan scoffed. Come on, we all know you're doing fine. Unlike some of us who are actually working hard to keep this family's legacy alive. I smiled, thinking about the notification their bank would send when they missed their payment next week. You're right, Ryan. Sometimes we all get exactly what we deserve. After dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom but took a deliberate detour past my father's study. The door was slightly ajar and I could hear my parents and Ryan speaking in hushed voices. I paused, my heart pounding as their words drifted out. She's not going to help, Ryan said, his voice bitter. Did you see how she just sat there, acting all superior with her tech money while our business is struggling? Patience, my father replied, his tone calm but calculating. We have another option. Remember those investment documents I found in her cloud storage when she used our Wi-Fi last month? A chill ran down my spine. They had snooped through my files during my last visit. I had carelessly used their Wi-Fi without a VPN, and my cloud storage had synced automatically. I looked it up, my father continued. It's a legitimate LLC and it's doing very well. She's been hoarding money there instead of helping her family. I raised a snake, my mother hissed, her voice thick with resentment. We'll give her one more chance to help voluntarily, she added. If not, I'll remind her about that time in college when she took money from your business account for her tuition. He thought we never knew, but we have proof. She'll have to help us then. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. The money they were talking about. I had borrowed it with my father's permission when their check for my tuition bounced. I had even paid it back within a month, with interest. But did that matter to them? No. They didn't care about the truth. They only cared about squeezing more money out of me. And it didn't stop there. If she refuses to help, my mother continued, her voice lowering but still perfectly clear, we can apply some pressure. Isn't that house still under her company's name? If we create a little scandal, claim she tricked her own family to steal the house, what do you think will happen? The media would eat that story up, Ryan sneered. She wouldn't risk her career over this. I clenched my fists, my breathing slowing. This wasn't just about money. They were willing to ruin my reputation to get it. I had always thought their greed had limits. That no matter what, they were still my family. I was wrong. I had emails proving everything. Their pathetic attempt at blackmail was as desperate as it was laughable. And if that doesn't work, Ryan added smoothly, his voice eerily casual, we can always reach out to her HR department. Ask a few questions about her mental stability. Maybe suggest she's been using company resources for personal projects. That would definitely get their attention. The sheer detachment in his tone, the effortless way he plotted to ruin my career, sent ice through my veins. These weren't family. These were parasites wearing the faces of people I once trusted. I forced myself to take a slow, measured breath and quietly slipped back toward the bathroom, flushed the toilet for show, then returned to the dining room with an expression as calm and unreadable as a polished mirror. They followed soon after, their movements rehearsed, their smiles so practiced they might as well have been actors preparing for their final act. Emily, dear, my mother cooed sweetly, have you given any thought to what we discussed about helping more with the mortgage? I met her gaze, holding it steady, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make her shift slightly. In her chair. Actually, I have, I said, my voice smooth, devoid of emotion. You're right. Family should help family. A flicker of triumph passed over my mother's face, but I wasn't done. I'll have an answer for you in exactly 8 days. The timing wasn't random. Their mortgage payment was due in 8 days, and I knew exactly what would happen when they missed it. Evergreen Property Investments LLC would finally reveal its true ownership. Ryan frowned, his confidence wavering for the first time. Why such a specific timeline? I stood up, gathering my purse with deliberate ease. Just need to check some things with my financial advisor. You understand, right? I let my gaze settle on him before adding, being careful with money is just good business sense. I smiled as I echoed his own favorite phrase, watching as his smirk faltered, confusion flashing across his features. My mother walked me to the door, pulling me into a carefully measured hug, her perfume thick in the air, another weapon in her well-crafted arsenal of manipulation. We knew you'd understand, sweetheart. Family always comes first. I let my arms remain limp at my sides, then slowly patted her shoulder once. Twice, detached, almost condescending. Yes, I agreed, thinking of the eviction notice sitting on my desk, its ink barely dry. Family always gets exactly what they deserve. As I drove home, I called Uncle Mark. You were right about them, I said the moment he answered. I wish I wasn't. Don't worry, I murmured, a slow, knowing smile forming. I'm done playing the silent partner in their little drama. It's time for the final act. The next week crawled by, every hour stretching like a held breath before the inevitable collapse. Their messages became relentless, shifting from thinly veiled guilt-tripping to outright desperation. Emily, we need to talk. Please, this is serious. You know how much we've done for you. We need your support. Each text only strengthened my resolve. I forwarded everything to Kate, who had been working behind the scenes to prepare for the confrontation that was now inevitable. The paperwork is ready, Kate confirmed when we met 3 days before the payment was due. Once they miss the payment, Evergreen Property Investments can exercise its purchase option immediately. And if necessary, we're fully prepared to issue eviction notices. I nodded, reviewing the documents carefully. Every clause, every fine print detail was a checkmate waiting to happen. And you're sure everything's legally sound? They can't fight this. Kate gave a small, knowing smile. They signed the agreement 4 years ago. Your father barely skimmed it, he was too desperate for a bailout to read the details. I exhaled slowly, savoring the irony. They had signed away their own home, blinded by their own arrogance. And in exactly 3 days, they would finally understand just how costly their greed had been. That evening, my brother launched his own attack. Hey sis, his text read, I was just talking to my friend in tech recruitment. Heard some companies are doing layoffs. Must be scary for you. Good thing you have family to fall back on. Speaking of which, about that help we discussed. The attempted manipulation was so transparent it was almost comical. The next day over coffee I showed the message to Uncle Mark. They never change, he said, shaking his head. Your aunt and I watched them do this to everyone in the family. It's why we distanced ourselves years ago. Did you know they went through my files when I visited? I asked. Not surprised, he said. They did. The same to your cousin when she stayed there last year. They're always looking for leverage. He paused, his expression turning serious. Are you ready for the fallout? They won't take this well. I thought about their threats to contact my company's HR, their plans to blackmail me, their years of taking my help while mocking me behind my back. I'm ready, I said simply. They made their choice. Now they'll face the consequences. 2 days before the payment was due, my mother called. Emily, we need your answer about the mortgage help. Times are tough and family needs to stick together. Don't worry, Mom, I replied, my voice steady. Everything will be clear very soon. That night I received an email from their bank. They had tried to transfer money to Evergreen Property Investments LLC, but the payment had bounced. Their account was already overdrawn. I forwarded the notification to Kate. Here we go, she replied. Want me to start the proceedings tomorrow? I thought about the lasagna dinner, their smug faces, their casual discussion of destroying my career. I thought about the years of manipulation, the constant demands, the endless ingratitude. No, I typed back. Let them wait. Until the payment officially fails. Let them spend the next 2 days thinking everything's fine. They taught me well. Timing is everything. I opened my laptop and began drafting an email to my company's HR department, documenting my family's threats and including the evidence Uncle Mark had gathered. Better to get ahead of their potential attacks. The end was in sight and I was leaving nothing to chance. Sometimes I muttered to myself, the best revenge is simply letting people face the consequences of their own actions. The payment deadline came and went. At exactly 9 a.m., Evergreen Property Investments LLC's automated system sent out its default notice. I watched my phone, counting down the seconds until the inevitable call. Took exactly 12 minutes. Emily, my mother's voice was frantic. Something's wrong with our mortgage payment. The bank is saying we defaulted, but that's impossible. We need your help immediately. Actually, I replied calmly, Evergreen Property Investments isn't a bank. It's an LLC. My LLC, to be specific. The silence on the other end was deafening. What? She finally whispered. Check your email, I said. You'll find a notice explaining that due to your default, Evergreen Property Investments is exercising its purchase option. The house is now legally mine. Your status has been changed to month tenants. This is a joke, she stammered. No joke, I said evenly. I've been covering the majority of your mortgage for 4 years while you all mocked me behind my back, called me a burden, plotted to blackmail me and threatened my career. How did you? Uncle Mark showed me the video. He showed me everything. There was silence before I continued, my voice steady. Now about your tenancy, your first rent payment is due in 30 days. I suggest you start looking for somewhere else to live. My father's voice suddenly broke in. They had put me on speaker. You ungrateful, careful, I cut him off. Is that any way to talk to your landlord? The eviction notice is ready. Don't make me serve it sooner than planned. I ended the call and blocked their numbers. Within minutes, my email began filling with messages from flying monkeys, distant relatives and family friends, telling me I was being cruel, that family should forgive family. I deleted them all without reading them. Some debts can't be paid with forgiveness. 3 months later, I stood in the empty house, my footsteps echoing through the vacant rooms. My family had finally moved out last week, forced to downsize to an apartment across town. They had tried everything, threats, guilt trips, legal challenges, but in the end the documents were ironclad. They had no choice but to accept reality. Ryan's attempt to contact my company's HR had backfired spectacularly. Thanks to my preemptive documentation and Uncle Mark's evidence, his accusations were dismissed immediately. Instead, his actions were reported to his real estate board, leading to an ethics investigation that effectively ended his career. My mother's final attempt at manipulation came through a tear-filled voicemail. How could you do this to your own family? The answer was simple. They had shown me exactly what family meant to them, and I had finally believed them. I walked through the kitchen, where it had all started, where they had sat around the table calling me worthless while I paid their bills. The irony wasn't lost on me. Uncle Mark and his wife were coming over later to help me prepare the house for sale. The proceeds would go toward establishing a foundation for helping victims of financial abuse. Something good could come from this after all. My phone buzzed with a text from Kate. Just heard from their lawyer. They're finally signing the last papers. It's really over. I smiled, looking around at the empty house one last time. They had always told me that family comes first, but they had never specified which family. I chose myself. And for the first time in years, that felt exactly right. Family is often described as the foundation of our lives, a source of unconditional love, trust, and support. But what happens when that foundation is built on manipulation, deceit, and entitlement? The story we just explored is a stark reminder that family isn't just about blood ties. It's about respect, integrity, and mutual care. Unfortunately, not everyone is lucky enough to have a family that genuinely values them. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love us the most are the very ones who take advantage of us the worst. One of the most powerful lessons from this story is the importance of setting boundaries. Emily spent years sacrificing for her family, covering their mortgage and offering financial support without expecting anything in return. But instead of gratitude, she was met with betrayal. Her family saw her success as something to exploit rather than celebrate. They felt entitled to her help not because they needed it but because they believed she owed them. This kind of toxic family dynamic is more common than we think, where one member is treated as the provider, while the rest take and take, offering nothing but criticism in return. Another crucial takeaway is that self-respect sometimes means walking away. Emily had every reason to feel guilty when she cut off her family, but she didn't. Why? Because she realized that real love isn't transactional. Real love isn't about how much money you can give, how many sacrifices you can make, or how much you can endure in the name of family. It's about mutual respect and care. When her family plotted to destroy her career, blackmail her, and force her into submission, it became clear. They didn't see her as family. They saw her as a resource. And when someone sees you as a tool rather than a person, the only way to win is to take that power away from them. This story also highlights the danger of entitlement and manipulation. Emily's family believed they could control her, but they never expected her to fight. They assumed their emotional blackmail, guilt-tripping, and threats would keep her in line. But they underestimated her strength. In the end, the very traps they set for her, trying to report her to HR, discrediting her reputation, and using past financial dealings against her, ended up backfiring. Their desperation blinded them and they lost everything. It's a reminder that entitlement can be a dangerous thing. When people expect something for nothing, they often end up with exactly what they deserve. Nothing. Perhaps the most important lesson here is that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Society often tells us that we must always forgive family no matter what. But does family really come first when they see you as nothing more than a source of money? Does family deserve loyalty when they actively try to destroy your future? Emily chose to walk away not because she didn't love her family, but because she finally realized they didn't love her the way she deserved. She chose herself. And in the end, that was the best decision she could have made. Now let's turn the question to you. If you were in Emily's situation, how would you react? Would you continue supporting your family despite their betrayal, hoping they might change? Or would you take a stand, set boundaries, and finally walk away? Let us know in the comments below. What would you do if the people closest to you turned out to be your biggest enemies?